In the bustling heart of Portville, a young woman named Elara toiled under the oppressive rule of her Aunt Dahlia. Orphaned at a tender age, Elara found herself trapped in a life of endless chores and biting remarks, a stark contrast to the life she once knew. Her days began before dawn, her hands raw from scrubbing floors, her body aching from relentless labor. Each sunrise brought with it the familiar sting of Aunt Dahlia's sharp tongue. "Elara, is this place still a mess? Elara, is this slop fit for humans? Elara, one more sound out of you, and you'll sleep outside." These words were the soundtrack of her existence. Elara was just 13 when a tragic accident stole her parents, leaving her in the dubious care of her father's distant cousin, Dahlia. At first, Dahlia feigned sympathy, her words dripping with false concern. "Don't worry," she'd coo, "you'll live with me, and I'll care for you like my own." But the moment the funeral ended and the well-wishers departed, Dahlia's true nature emerged. That very night, she seized Elara by the ear, her voice a venomous hiss. "From now on, you'll call me Madam. You'll cook, clean, and obey my every command. Disobey, and I'll toss you onto the streets, and no one will care." And indeed, no one did. For years, Elara became an unpaid servant in the very home where she once lived as a cherished daughter. Her stepsisters, Serafina and Lila, spent their days lounging in silken robes, engrossed in their digital worlds, while Elara bathed in cold water and wore threadbare clothes that barely covered her knees. One dreary morning, Elara stirred the thin porridge in a rusty pot, the smoke from the crackling firewood stinging her eyes. Her stomach rumbled, empty since the day before. The creak of the back door sent a shiver down her spine. Aunt Dahlia emerged, yawning, her eyes narrowing at Elara. "Still standing there like a statue staring at food?" she snapped. "Do I need to whip you before you move?" Elara quickly ladled the porridge into a bowl, her hands trembling. "Sorry, madam." Dahlia snatched the bowl and then, with a sneer, spat into the pot. "This one's for the master. Don't you dare touch it." Elara nodded, swallowing her pride and her hunger, and sat back on the floor, hugging her knees. Dahlia turned back to her, an unexpected grin spreading across her face. "Eat fast and bathe. You have a visitor today." "A visitor?" Elara asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes," Dahlia said, licking her oily fingers. "A man. He wants a wife, and I told him you're available." Elara's heart skipped a beat. "A man, for me?" Dahlia cackled. "Don't flatter yourself. He's no prince. In fact, he's blind." Elara blinked in confusion. "Yes, a blind man," Dahlia repeated, standing to her full height. "He's looking for a simple, obedient girl. I told him I have the perfect useless one right here." "Madam, please, I don't want to get married yet. I'm only 19. Dahlia's smile vanished. She grabbed Elara's chin, jerking her face upward. "And who do you think you are to decide anything in this house? You live under my roof, eat my food, wear my charity. Now I've found a man foolish enough to take you, and you say no." Tears welled in Elara's eyes. "I want to go to school." Dahlia slapped her so hard that the bowl in Elara's hand tumbled to the floor. "School? What school? Do you think I'll waste my money sending you anywhere when I have daughters of my own to care for?" Elara held her throbbing cheek, too stunned to speak. "You'll marry that blind man tomorrow," Dahlia declared, her voice icy. "Whether you like it or not. That way, you'll stop being my burden." She turned and walked away, her slippers slapping against the floor. Elara sank to the ground, her shoulders shaking, the tears flowing like a relentless rain, bitter, hot, endless. "Is this how my life ends?" she whispered to herself. But life had a surprise waiting, a twist even pain couldn't predict. The next morning dawned under a blanket of thick clouds and an eerie silence. For the first time in years, Elara wished the day would never begin. She sat on the edge of her thin mattress, clutching the frayed hem of her only decent gown, a dull blue dress with loose seams and a faded neckline. Her hands trembled as she struggled to fix the broken zipper at the back. "Elara!" Dahlia's voice thundered from the corridor. "He's here." Elara froze, her breath caught in her throat. The blind man. Her heart hammered against her ribs, her chest felt tight. She wanted to scream, to run, to vanish into the ground. But she stood quietly, wiped her tears, and stepped outside, for disobedience was not an option in Aunt Dahlia's house. When she stepped into the compound, she saw him. He stood tall, dressed in a neatly pressed tunic and dark sunglasses, holding a white cane that he gently tapped against the tiled floor. A man in a sharp black suit stood beside him, perhaps his driver or assistant, guiding him. His expression was unreadable, calm, poised, and completely still. Aunt Dahlia beamed as she rushed forward. "Kaylin, welcome, welcome. This is the girl I told you about. She's hardworking, quiet, and very obedient." Elara looked up at him. Kaylin's face was youthful, no older than 30. He didn't smile, he only nodded, then turned his head slightly in her direction. "So, this is Elara?" he asked. His voice was deep and steady, not frail, not broken, just firm. Elara bowed her head. "Yes, sir. I know this is sudden," he said softly, "but I have my reasons. I'm not looking for beauty or status. I just want a companion who won't see my blindness as a weakness." Dahlia laughed. "Oh, she's perfect for that. She doesn't even have a life, she'll have time for all your needs." Elara's hands balled into fists, her body hot with silent humiliation, but she remained quiet. "Do you have any questions for me, Elara?" Kaylin asked. She looked up. His face was turned toward her, though his eyes were hidden behind the dark glasses. Her lips parted. "Why? Why me?" Dahlia shoved her forward. "What does it matter? The man is asking for your hand." Elara steadied herself. "Please, madam, let me speak." Dahlia narrowed her eyes. Elara turned back to Kaylin. I don't know you. I'm not ready for marriage. I want to go to school. I don't want to be forced into something I didn't choose." There was a pause. Kaylin didn't speak, but the man beside him whispered something in his ear. Dahlia's face twisted. "You ungrateful girl. Do you think good men grow on trees? Look at yourself, no mother, no father, no money, nothing. You're lucky anyone even wants you." "Madam, please," Elara whispered, her voice cracking. Dahlia slapped her. "You will marry him. End of discussion." The assistant handed Dahlia a white envelope. She opened it, and her eyes lit up at the sight of thick wads of cash. Her face instantly softened. "Let's begin the preparations. The marriage will happen tomorrow." Elara stood rooted to the ground. The world spun around her. Everything felt surreal, a blind stranger, a forced wedding, a stepmother who had just sold her like a commodity. That night, Elara didn't sleep. She sat by the small window in her room, staring at the stars. Her heart was heavy. Was this her fate? A life of caretaking and silence? A future locked in darkness with a man she didn't know? Yet, deep in her soul, a strange peace began to stir. She didn't know why, but something about Kaylin felt different. He hadn't mocked her. He hadn't touched her. He hadn't even smiled. Yet, his silence was not cruel. It was quiet, watchful, almost knowing. The next morning, in a rushed and joyless ceremony held under Dahlia's leaking zinc roof, Elara became Kaylin's wife. No music, no friends, just a stepmother counting money in the corner and neighbors whispering behind folded arms. When Elara stepped into the black sedan that would carry her to a strange new life, she didn't cry. She only looked back once at the house that had given her scars but no love. Then she faced forward and unknowingly drove toward destiny. The car drove in silence for the first 10 minutes. Elara sat stiffly in the back seat beside Kaylin, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The new wedding ring on her finger felt more like a chain than a symbol of love. Kaylin's assistant, Reese, sat in the front, occasionally glancing at them through the rearview mirror. The car was spotless, the leather seats cool and scented. Everything felt expensive, too expensive for a man Dahlia claimed was poor and blind. Elara couldn't help but notice the luxury of the vehicle, the glowing screen on the dashboard, the gentle hum of the air conditioner, the smoothness of the ride. This didn't feel like the car of a blind, struggling man. "Where are we going?" she asked quietly. Kaylin turned his head toward her, the dark glasses still covering his eyes. "Home," he said simply. Elara swallowed. "Where is home?" "You'll see soon enough," he replied, his voice calm. But there was something behind his words, a quiet mystery. The car exited the busy streets and turned toward a secluded road lined with tall trees and modern streetlights. The area transformed. No more noise, no potholes, no roadside vendors yelling, pure water or gala. She peered out the window, confused. The houses became grander, white-fenced compounds, security gates, landscaped gardens. These were mansions. Some had fountains, others had long driveways and swimming pools. This was where the rich lived. Something didn't add up. "Are we dropping someone off?" she asked cautiously. "No," Kaylin said. "This is our destination." Then the car made a final turn and stopped before a towering black and gold gate, far larger than any she'd ever seen. On the gate were large initials carved in metal, RK. Elara's breath hitched. Her heart began to pound. A security guard approached, typed a code, and the gate slowly opened. What lay beyond made her mouth fall open. The estate was massive. Sprawling lawns on either side, a fountain with marble lion head spitting water, exotic flowers lined up like royalty welcoming a queen. At the end of the long paved driveway stood a mansion that looked like something from a dream. It had pillars, balconies, and windows so wide she could see the curtains fluttering from outside. She turned to Kaylin, stunned. "I thought you said you were blind." He smiled slightly, but gave no answer. The car rolled forward until it stopped directly in front of the entrance. Two uniformed guards opened the doors. Another man rushed forward and opened Elara's side. As she stepped out, her dusty sandals touched clean tiled ground. Her head spun. A woman in an apron came out from the mansion, curtsied, and said, "Welcome, madam." "Madam," Elara whispered. They entered through the large double doors into a living room that could rival a five-star hotel. Crystal chandeliers, velvet couches, glass tables, a spiral staircase. There were paintings on the walls, real ones, not prints. A scent of vanilla and lavender filled the air. She stood in the middle, frozen. Her legs shook. "Is this your house?" she asked, her voice trembling. Kaylin reached for his sunglasses and slowly removed them. For the first time, Elara saw his eyes, bright brown, clear, focused, seeing. He smiled. "Yes," he said. "I'm not blind." Elara's knees buckled. She stumbled backward into a chair, gasping. You can see." "I can see very well," he said. "And yes, this is my home. I don't understand." He walked toward her, calm and steady. "I pretended to be blind to test hearts. In a world full of people who love wealth more than people, I needed to know who would still treat me with decency if they thought I had nothing." Tears spilled from Elara's eyes. "Then why me? You never smiled at me. You never flattered me. You didn't fake kindness. You simply looked, honest and still agreed to come with me. Even in your brokenness, you had dignity. That told me everything." Elara covered her face, overwhelmed. This wasn't a nightmare, it was a miracle. You're not just a husband, she whispered. You're a billionaire. Kaelan Radcliffe, he said, offering his hand. Owner of Radcliffe Holdings. But here, I'm simply your husband, and you are my blessing. Elara took his hand, still trembling. For the first time in years, someone saw her. Truly saw her. Not as a burden, not as a mistake, but as a woman worthy of love. 3 days had passed since the wedding, and Aunt Dahlia was still celebrating. She sipped a soft drink in her plastic chair beneath the mango tree and bragged to every neighbor who passed by. At least I've done my part. That blind man will humble her. All her secret dreams of going to school. Finished. Her daughters, Serafina and Lila, painted their nails beside her, laughing. Mommy, can you imagine Elara feeding him, cleaning his mess, and bathing him? Serafina giggled. She deserves it, Lila added, blowing on her nails, always pretending to be decent. Dahlia smiled wickedly. Let her suffer a little. I could have kicked her out long ago, but I let her stay. Now she's married off and out of my life. Thank God. Just then, a sleek black Mercedes-Benz slowly pulled up in front of the gate. Everyone paused. It wasn't the kind of car that ever entered their neighborhood. The door opened, and a sharply dressed man in a black suit stepped out. He carried a gold-embossed envelope and walked directly toward Aunt Dahlia. Good afternoon, madam, he said with a slight bow. Special delivery from Mr. and Mrs. Radcliffe. Dahlia blinked. Radcliffe? Who is that? Your daughter and her husband, he replied. Elara and Chief Kaelan Radcliffe. Dahlia stood up, confused. Wait, Chief. He handed her the envelope and walked away without another word. The Mercedes hummed to life and glided off down the dusty road. Dahlia opened the envelope, and the world around her stopped. Inside was a glossy invitation card, thick and luxurious. Written in gold lettering were the words, "You are cordially invited to the housewarming dinner at Radcliffe Estate, hosted by Chief Kaelan Radcliffe and his beloved wife, Elara Radcliffe." Below that was a photo. Dahlia gasped. It was Elara, not in rags, not barefoot, but in a floor-length emerald gown with diamonds around her neck. She stood beside Kaelan, who was no longer in sunglasses. His eyes were open and seeing. Another photo showed the estate entrance, the arcade gate. A third showed Elara laughing, radiant on a marble balcony overlooking a fountain. Dahlia's hands trembled. Her mouth moved, but no words came out. Her neighbors crowded around. Madam, what's inside? Dahlia tried to hide the photo, but it was too late. Someone snatched it. They all saw. The silence that followed was thick with shock. She married a billionaire, one neighbor whispered. Wait, the man isn't blind, another gasped. But you told us he was broke and blind, cried Mama Rose from across the street. Dahlia staggered backward, still holding the invitation. No, no, this must be a trick. Serafina grabbed the photo, her eyes wide. Mommy, that house, that dress. Elara is rich. Lila's jaw dropped. You said he was poor. Dahlia finally found her voice, and it came out as a scream. Lies. This is witchcraft. She must have charmed him. The entire neighborhood burst into murmurs and mocking laughter. This is karma, someone shouted. That girl suffered in your house like a slave. She never even ate 3 times a day, another woman said. Now see what God has done for her. Dahlia dropped to her knees, wailing and tearing at her wrapper. Mommy, stand up. Serafina hissed, embarrassed. But Dahlia didn't care. How can Elara be living like a queen while I sit here like a fool? One neighbor clapped. You forced her into the marriage thinking it would destroy her. Now it has elevated her. Dahlia stared at the photos again, her eyes burning with disbelief. Elara, her housemaid, her punching bag, the girl she reduced to nothing, was now Mrs. Radcliffe, wife of a billionaire. She had sold her into royalty without knowing it. Dahlia didn't eat that day, or the next. Rumors spread like wildfire, and from that moment on, no one respected her in the neighborhood again. Elara stood quietly on the balcony of the Radcliffe estate, wrapped in a silk robe, her arms folded against the soft evening breeze. Below her, the lights of the fountain glowed golden in the night. It felt unreal, like a dream that refused to end. She wasn't sweeping floors. She wasn't scrubbing toilets. She wasn't being slapped for asking questions. She was free. But even in her freedom, a shadow of doubt lingered in her chest. Would this last? Behind her, Kalen approached silently. "You're always out here," he said softly. She turned to him, smiling faintly. "It's the only place I still feel like I'm awake." He leaned on the railing beside her. "You think this is a dream?" "I think," she hesitated, "that maybe I don't deserve it." Kalen's brow furrowed. "Why would you say that?" Elara's eyes welled up. "Because I'm not polished. I'm not like those girls who grew up in wealth or wore perfume to school. I've served people my whole life. I don't know how to be this." Kalen took her hand gently. "Elara, I didn't marry a status. I married a soul." She looked up at him, startled. "I could have had any woman," he said. "But I was looking for truth. You didn't smile to impress me. You didn't flirt or flatter. You were raw, broken, and honest. That is the rarest kind of beauty." She tried to speak, but emotion choked her. "I watched you long before I entered your life," he added. "I sent Reese to your neighborhood weeks before. You shared your last slice of bread with a beggar. You covered your stepsister when she broke Aunt Dahlia's mirror. You were abused, yet still kind. That's what told me, this girl is gold." Elara sobbed quietly. She had cried so many tears from pain, but this time they were from healing. "I want you to go back to school," he said. "Finish your education. Study anything. I'll sponsor everything. You'll have the life they told you didn't deserve." She looked at him, stunned. "Why are you so good to me?" "Because someone once rescued me when I was young and lost. I promised God I would do the same when I found someone worth it." Elara wrapped her arms around him, and for the first time in years, she felt what love without condition felt like. Back in the village, Aunt Dahlia's house was quiet now. No more boasting, no more visitors. Shame had become her blanket. Her daughters had turned cold, blaming her for deceiving them and losing the one chance they had to access real wealth. Her shop had fewer customers, and whispers followed her every step. "Mama, blind-in-law," people mocked. She could barely sleep, haunted by memories of how she treated Elara. Then one morning, a black SUV parked outside her gate again. Dahlia peeked through the curtain, fearful. Not again. Elara stepped out, dressed in a beautiful orange gown, carrying a small bag. Dahlia opened the door, stunned. "You came." "I did," Elara said calmly. Dahlia stepped back, unsure of what to say. "Did your husband send you?" "No," Elara said. "I came on my own." Dahlia looked down. "I suppose you are here to mock me." Elara shook her head. "No, I came to forgive you." Dahlia looked up in disbelief. "I will never forget how you treated me," Elara continued. "But I refuse to let your bitterness poison my future. I came here because you're the only family I have left, whether you accept it or not." Dahlia's lips quivered. She sank to the floor and began to cry. "I didn't know, Elara. I was just tired, angry, and poor. I treated you like an animal, and now you shine brighter than all of us." Elara nodded. "And now you see God lifts those we despise." She handed Dahlia the bag. Inside was money. Not too much, just enough for your shop, she said. And maybe to learn kindness. Then she turned and walked back to the car. Dahlia wept, not just from shame, but from the one thing she never expected from Elara, mercy. That night, Elara curled into Kaelin's arms, her heart finally at peace. She had been beaten, silenced, and rejected. But now she was loved, cherished, and seen. Not because she fought for power, but because she never lost her soul. And that was her true inheritance. What are your thoughts on Elara's journey and the powerful lesson this story imparts? Share your insights in the comments below.